Hello, and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle Me in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. Well, the last 20 plus videos have been interesting, to say the least, studying everything from the Kabbalah, Zionism, Communism, the raw material channeling, Cryon, channeled material, and Esther Hicks, Jane Roberts, Natalie Gleason, Tuning In, a journalist investigating the channeled material, the Pulse of Creation series, Ernest Norman, Mysticism with Evelyn Underhill, Occult material, the Book of the Dead, Edgar Cayce, Masonry, Freemasons, Jewish history, the Phoenix Journals, major trends in Jewish mysticism, messages of deception about UFOs. Where do they really come from? What are they doing here? Germany must perish. Crazy stuff. Prior to World War II, Jewish people in New York and the world were working hard to see Germany destroyed. Why? Well, World War I, Germany was betrayed, so that the Jewish people, in particular the Zionist Jewish people, who had been working for a few hundred years to get the Palestinians land, some kind of prophesized future. So anyways, it's a lot about what's going on in the background. What kind of entities are there? Where do we come from? Where are we going? What's with Planet X? Nemesis, some kind of star system coming. The Anunnaki aliens. What's true? And then I'm watching about the Antarctica videos and reading material and books during the last presidential election. And John Kerry goes down there. Religious leaders are visiting Antarctica. Astronauts are visiting Antarctica. And then I got David Wilcock, Corey Good, and other people on the alternate news and YouTube videos, websites, talking about some kind of an ascension. Going from the third dimension to the fourth dimension. We humans are about to ascend. So I thought maybe it's time I did take a look at David Wilcock, make a video about his books, one of his books. David Wilcock, The Synchronicity Key, The Hidden Intelligence Guiding the Universe and You, and me. I have some of his other books. I've been buying these over the years. The source field. What is the source field? Is there some kind of place where we come from, where there are beings, gods, angels, guides, dead relatives looking out after us? A stunning synthesis of hidden science and lost prophecies. The source field investigations exposes many great secrets. DNA transformation. DNA transformation. They're talking about a new race of humans, of beings, maybe not human. Consciousness science, wormholes, stargate travel, sacred geometry, ancient conspiracies, multi-dimensional time, the Mayan calendar, and a stunning new model of galactic energy fields triggering mental, biological, and spiritual revolution. How do you like that? And another book I have on David Wilcock, the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. So I'm not going to try to say negative things about any of this material. Try to keep an open mind, interdimensional communication, and global transformation. So I was looking at the inside cover here. I'm going to read this mission statement by the author. Millions of people have been influenced and inspired by the work of Edgar Cayce. That's true. Most of those who study his material have accepted reincarnation as a modality by which evolution of consciousness occurs. The facts of David Wilcock's life forced him to evaluate if it was possible that he was the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. In this book, the case will now be presented to you, if you buy this book. And I'm not trying to do audiobooks when I do these videos. I'm giving you a synopsis. Usually I pick a chapter. And if you're interested, go buy the book. But use some discernment. Don't just believe everything you read. That's part of the problem on planet Earth. If the case should be made successfully made herein, it will give credence to an even more important issue. According to the information Wilcock is receiving, which is backed up by his own scientific research, our planet is at the end of a 75,000-year cycle and moving into a dimensional shift that Edgar Cayce in his own readings foreshadowed. So I thought a great cycle was about 25,000 years, but he says the end of a 75,000-year cycle, because each astrological sign is a little over 2,000 years. Just saying, that's what I thought it was. It's like 2660 or something. 1,000 years divided by 12 equals 2,100 or something. In the present time period, there is a rare opportunity for all of us to accelerate our spiritual evolution in ways that are very different from past reincarnations cycles, based on the ability to connect with the qualities of compassion, love, and wisdom. The author presents this book with the hope that it will help us understand the importance and implications of the choice we make over the next few years, that it may assist us all in having a conscious realization that we're all part of each other and on our way back home. So is Earth, as we know it, about to expire? Are we as human beings, the way we know that, about to expire? And if so, are we about to ascend? So this is the book I chose to make a video about. As usual, there'll be part 2, part 3, part 4, and I still have to probably get the other book of his I'm aware about, Ascension. So that'll be 4 books. I could be making videos about David Wilcock well into the next year and a half. My goal is to make these videos until October 2018, which will be 5 years of making the Freemasonry and Satanism series, trying to figure out WTH, what the heck is going on in our reality. So the chapter I decided to read here, and I pre-read everything, is mapping out the afterlife. Still getting used to this new computer. So what happens when you die? Have you been reincarnated? How many times were you reincarnated? What are you doing here? Why do things happen to you? Why are you married, who you're married to, or not married and have had the life that you've had? Was there a purpose? Is there a purpose? Are you following your purpose? Are you gaining in soul growth, or are you losing in evolution and soul growth? Does it matter? Lots of questions. So let me read on here, chapter 8, mapping out the afterlife. So what's it like on the other side? What is David Wilcock saying in this book? Let's see, when was this book published? Looking in the index here, it says 2014. So I guess we could say it's pretty up to date. 2014, what was happening then? Syria was under attack, like it still is. And lots of preparations in the world for disarming we the people for some kind of major event. Why? All right, here we go. If reincarnation is a scientific fact, recognized in many of the great world religions, then does anything actually happen as we transition between one life and the next? Do we simply pop out of one body and pop into another, with no consciousness or experience in between? Or is there an elaborate afterlife that we go through, complete with a full set of experiences that help us plan out our next incarnation? Does the veil lift between lives? Do we remember who we really are between lives? Do we step into a fuller level of who we really are? Do we now have a comprehensive understanding of what we're hoping to learn from our lifetimes in the different cycles of history on Earth? Do we formulate a great plan for how we can learn our lessons and penetrate the veil in future incarnations? So did you plan out this life? Did I plan out this life? There is another area in which scientific research has shed key light on the destiny we all must eventually face. Clinical death involves the cessation of the heartbeat. So when your heart stops beating, you're dead, they say. Of breathing and of all brainwave activity. Without brainwaves, the thinking mind should cease to exist, at least in the conventional biology. Once you are brain dead, no electrical activity occurs in the brain whatsoever. Conventional scientists believe this electrical activity is the root of consciousness. And without it, you have no thoughts. Nonetheless, many people report a continuing set of experiences that occur after they have been declared clinically dead and are successfully resuscitated and returned to their bodies. So humans, children, grown adults have died in accidents, in hospitals, in the water, in a swimming pool, and then brought back to life. Did they remember anything in between? Should they have remembered anything in between? Even if someone has no prior knowledge of any reports of an afterlife, there are remarkable similarities in their reports, found all over the world. So some doctors noticed when some children had died and they brought them back to life, that they talked about the bright light. They talked about meeting deceased relatives like grandparents or something, and even said what they said to them, a message that the parents or other people realized the child could not have known. So what's true? Dr. Sam Parnera and his associates at the University of Southampton examined a wide variety of professional scientific studies into near-death experiences, or NDEs, and found many commonalities among them. A number of recent scientific studies carried out by independent researchers have demonstrated that 10 to 20% of people who go through cardiac arrest, clinical death report, lucid, a well-structured thought processes, reasoning, memories, and sometimes detailed recall of events during their encounter with death. So somebody died of a heart attack, and they were declared clinically dead. The electronic instrument just had no heartbeat, that straight line. So should they come back about 2 minutes later and report on some very interesting details? Yes? No? What do you think? Dr. Pim van Lonen, a cardiologist in the Netherlands, conducted the largest hospital-based study of NDE, near-death experiences. Years after hearing a patient report seeing a tunnel, a light, and beautiful colors, and hearing wonderful music during a clinical death in 1969. And I am reminded of those many books I've gone over when I first began my research in 2005, 6, 7, and 8 of Psychic Society of Europe and then Psychic Society of America. From the 1800s up until just before World War II, mediums and psychic research was very popular. For some reason, after World War II, the media and the popularity dropped off, although on many cities, on many corners, you will find those psychic stores with the neon line out front, and you can go in and see a psychic. So there was a lot of interest in this up until after World War II, when apparently the communists and other forces were trying to get people to believe there was no God, they had no souls. They started delivering LSD and drugs to people, creating the hippie movement and a movement called festivals in Europe. And the elites were obsessed with overpopulation and were worried about a thinking, intelligent public that might get in the way of their world rule, in the way of the Zionist and communist people's rule, the Illuminati, to create this new reality, this new age, this new world order. Just a little bit of history there, what happened, and I've got the books, I've made the videos, and we'll be looking at those issues again. I've got more books. But let's try to find out what happens when somebody dies, and in between their lives as humans, what happens, what kind of school do they go to, who do they have to talk to, who do they get reincarnated with? A group of souls, people you know. In one lifetime it might be somebody's your mother, in the next lifetime it might be your daughter. This was a full 7 years before Life After Life. I've got to get these books and read them. Dr. Raymond Moody's groundbreaking book on near-death experiences first appeared. Dr. Van Lommel didn't investigate NDAs any further until 1986, after he had read a stunningly detailed NDA story that took place while a person was clinically dead for a full 6 minutes. All right, moving on here. After reading this book, I started to interview my patients, says the doctor, who had survived cardiac arrest. To my great surprise, within 2 years, about 50% told me about their NDE. So in 1988, we started a prospective study of 344 consecutive survivors of cardiac arrest in 10 Dutch hospitals. 62 patients reported some recollection of the time of clinical death. 50% of the patients with NDE reported awareness of being dead and had positive emotions, reported moving through a tunnel, and had an observation of a celestial landscape. Wow, imagine that, flying through something like the sky with the stars, a celestial landscape. And had a meeting with deceased relatives. About 25% of the patients with the NDE, near-death experience, had an out-of-body experience, and I've had an out-of-body experience. Saw myself floating there on my sofa at the end of Christmas Day when I was doing charity work all day. Ironically, I decided to travel from that room with the TV on, the light on, and I could see the clock and the refrigerator. And it was nighttime outside. And I thought to myself, how do I travel? And I thought, well, just think where you want to go. So I wanted to go back to where I came from and see what those people were still doing, and then come back to my body and call them on the phone and tell them about this experience. I was actually excited until I left the room, when I willed myself to do it, and I knew I was speeding through darkness. Only a second or two. I didn't make it to the celestial sky or anything. But I panicked. And I go, wait a minute, am I dead? I don't want to be dead. And the next thing I know, I pop back into my body and I'm laying there on the sofa looking up at the ceiling. Slowly I sit up and I go over the events, and I was convinced I was out of my body. Alright, so about 25% of the patients with an NDE had an out-of-body experience, had communication with the light, or observed colors. 13% of a life review, and 8 experienced a border. Patients with an NDE did not show any fear of death. They strongly believed in an afterlife, and their insight in what is important in life had changed. So after you have one of these NDEs, you appreciate life on a whole different level. Loving compassion for oneself, for others, and for nature apparently increases. They now understood the cosmic law that everything one does to others will ultimately be returned to oneself, hatred and violence as well as love and compassion. Remarkably, there was often evidence of increased intuitive feelings. So you get an increase in maybe psychic intuition. Dr. Van Lommel's study of these 62 cases of near-death experience reveals that we do seem to know who we are and what we are really doing here when we move into the afterlife. So your memory of who you really are comes back to you, maybe? We are fully aware of the law of karma and that we are here to learn to love each other. So I keep saying we're spiritual beings in these biological bodies. And I started this series and my investigation in 2005 when I went to Costa Rica, one of those big 0 birthdays, and people down there in Central America told me about things going on in the world, and that they felt sorry for we Americans because we didn't know what was really going on, that we're being played for fools, we're being beguiled and deceived and lied to and cheated. We were deceived in World War I, World War II. But let me get back to this material. I can go on. But I got into my investigation, and I've studied all kinds of different topics, read all kinds of books. I'm all over the place because I'm convinced there's only one reality here on earth, and it's all connected. As we know, with the one world order, one world religion, one world currency, we're in trouble if they manage to pull that off. like the Hunger Games movie. So back to the book. We may often regret the unloving things that we've done. So when you do die and realize who you really are and you look at your past life, you might have a regret or two. I think we all have something we wish we hadn't have done. But we are very focused on coming back to repeat the same lessons again in the hopes of learning to open our hearts. The website neardeath.com features an impressive list of 51 different proofs for the reality of near-death experiences. In the studies of Dr. Kenneth Ring, people reported witnessing real events that occurred during the time of their clinical deaths. Some of these events were happening right there in the operating room as their brainwave activity, heartbeat, and respiration had completely gone flat. So they were dead. And I've heard about people having surgery and dying, and during the surgery, they're looking down at the doctor operating on them. And when they wake up, they tell the doctor what they said. So I guess doctors ought to be a little cautious about what they might say. Insulting comments about the person. Just a little thought there. In other cases, they successfully observed and remembered things that had happened at distances that were significantly far away from where their physical bodies had been. They were able to bring back specific memories of things people said and did around them that could later be proven correct. So like I said, some people have witnessed their own surgery or their own car accident with the ambulance people putting them in an ambulance. Isn't that crazy? Most surprisingly, some people actually appeared in front of their loved ones as ghosts, partially visible images of their former selves. And like I said, from the 1800s and throughout history, there have been people who have died far away. And back then they didn't have the internet or telephones. But they would appear at the bedside of their mother, maybe, or wife. In some of those psychic stories, the guy from a battle in a war appeared at the bedside of his wife and wanted to tell her that he had buried some gold under the horse's stall in the barn, and he wanted her to have it to support the family. So he came back just to tell her before he moved on. We'll be going over more of those psychic books I have, the old ones, 100 years old, 80 years old, 120 years old. I collected those books when I first started my investigation into WTH. Wanted to find out what's going on in our reality. They were able to have full conversations with their loved ones in this ghostly form. Both the patient and the family members remember having the same conversation after the patient was resuscitated. This data is extremely compelling. We already use eyewitness testimony to establish proof in a court of law. Eyewitness testimony can sometimes send someone to life imprisonment or even death. However, in the case of phenomenon of near-death experiences, eyewitness testimony is constantly ignored. People just don't want to believe some of this stuff. Overlooked and attacked with dubious sounding and often ridiculous skeptical explanations. These attacks are much more akin to religious zealousy from the atheist perspective than they are to the spirit of true science in which the results of the data lead to the investigation. And I might add, the same thing with 911 and so much more. When people look into who and why World War I, World War II happened, and many other things. The Oklahoma City bombing, false flag shootings, bombings, and the symbols. it perplexes me, boggles my mind, why people don't see these things for what they are. Events meant to sway public opinion, and not for our benefit by any means. I'm going to jump around here so that I can at least get out all the material on this particular chapter in this video. It's more than I can do in 2 hours, mapping out the afterlife, chapter 8 of this book. And again, I'm not trying to do an audio book. If you're interested in what David Wilcock has to say, I've read this entire chapter, as you can see here. I've read every page. I underlined what I wanted to highlight. I'm trying to, I know it's going to take me a while, but I want to get inside David Wilcock's head, and where is he coming from, and why is he and Corey Good and a bunch of others talking about some planetary shift from third dimension to fourth dimension, which is not a dense material world we live in now. That planet Earth, I guess, is going to change forever. Some kind of evolved state. And we, the people, are going to evolve with it for better or for worse. Alright, so it says here, Stage 7, Life Selection. So did you choose to be here? What will you choose for your next life? And it would be nice if we could remember all our past lives and the other world where we come from as spiritual beings. But then again, I suppose it would ruin the purpose. You wouldn't learn anything. Leaving the spirit world can be a horribly difficult process. You are knowingly turning your back on a world of love, peace, and wisdom, and blissful happiness to return to a world that can often be filled with suffering, pain, betrayal, and disappointment. Some souls resist this process for as long as they can and generally wish they did not have to return. But sooner or later they must. I suppose that would be the same with kids that we put in school in kindergarten, first grade, second grade. They start screaming, I don't want to go to school. Tell them they gotta go. They have to learn. So I suppose that's why we're living on this planet at this time. I suspect that's a good part of it. Some souls move on to other worlds if the world that they had been living on is no longer available to host physical human life. So I guess if they have a nuclear holocaust here on Earth, if you died during that holocaust, your next reincarnation would not be here. The law of one terms, in law of one terms, once Earth is fully transitioned into fourth density. So he's saying that in this book. Earth is going to transform into fourth density. If you don't know what that means, I'll make it simple. We living humans, and even the plant outside, and the bird in the air, are third density. And when you die and you become a spiritual entity, that's fourth density. And even as a spiritual entity, you can graduate to fifth density, sixth density, and seventh density, which apparently you would become some kind of divine being, one of the leaders of some celestial council, according to what I've been reading here. Like I said, I got these 3 books that stack up to this much material. So I'll be reading individual chapters and making future videos so we can get a snapshot of what it is exactly David Wilcock teaches and thinks, and maybe we can understand where he's coming from with this Antarctica information and some kind of galactic federation, beings, aliens, and other stuff he talks about in his videos. That's what got me moving in this direction. I really wasn't focused on the channelers and the entities that they channel, the psychics and mediums. But as I found out, it's quite popular out there. People are listening to it every day. They're being told that you are God, you are the creator. There's no such thing as sin. It's just an experience. Okay, in law of one terms, once Earth has fully transitioned into fourth density, estimated to be between 100 and 700 years from 2011 is when this transformation is supposed to take place. So that's not anything like tomorrow that they would have us believe. But he did write this book in 2014. Maybe he's updated his opinion since then. And in this book, when he talks about the law of one terms, that would be the raw material I've been going over, channeling. We'll look at the raw book on this video just so you can see that the book I was making the one video on, series number 122. I can see the book from here. I made a video, and I'll be making another video on the raw material, channeled material. So David Wilcock is referencing the raw material, channeled material, from an entity from the other side in this book. In law of one terms, once Earth has fully transitioned into fourth density, estimated to be between 100 and 700 years from 2011. So why are they talking about like it's imminent and doing things like preparing for martial law, threats of World War III, nuclear holocaust, and terror events, biodiversity, sustainability, microchipping people, spying on us, trying to create the new age and the new world order? I'm just trying to put everything together with some common sense in my mind. That's why I read these different topics, trying to see how they all coalesce, connecting the dots. Anyone who still needs third density incarnation for their evolutionary growth process will naturally end up moving to a new and different world. So when Earth transforms into fourth density, people will not be able to reincarnate in three density form. They'll have to go to another world to do that, to get that particular education. Just like many of us have graduated from high school, but then we have children and they've got to go through high school. Souls are not all created at the same time. So there are younger and older souls, according to what I have researched. So some people are behind other people, and some people are more advanced souls. All right, case 24 in this doctor's study reveals that he will not be returning to Earth in his next life. He plainly states that in the future, some Earth people have been moved to another planet, and the Earth has fewer people and is less crowded. Several of Dr. Newton's clients indicated that something like this will happen in our future. So when these people were hypnotized by Dr. Newton, they remembered being in between lives, and they remembered past lives. And this doctor, who was an excellent hypnotist, was doing this research with many of his clients, patients. So this concept of planet hopping in Dr. Newton's work precisely validates what we read in the Law of One series. Well, if I'm going to keep mentioning the Law of One, I'm going to show you the book. You can go on the internet. There's an excellent website with everything, the raw material. And I'm not trying to teach this material. It's just interesting that so many people are into this stuff as we're reading in the book here. And all this other channeled material. It just might behoove us to pay attention to what these channeled entities are saying. As I keep saying, is it good for us or bad for us? But anyways, on the internet, I found an excellent website with the raw material. Channeled by whom? If I can remember the name. Don Enkins and Carla Ruckert. And this was published in 1984. And again, we seem to have some Egyptian hieroglyphics here on the bottom, which makes me a little suspicious, but that's just me. Let me keep reading the book, and you can be the judge for yourself and go back and watch my series 122. And since then, 123, 124, 125, 126, 134, 132, and all those newer series I've been doing on the channeled material, and 112 with the Edgar Cayce material, and the material I made on Barbara Marciniak in my series, I think, 59, channeling the Palladian entities, she says. And the pixies are here, and the angels. Go watch her videos. That's how she talks. Or watch my videos. I got 5 2-hour videos on Series 59, I believe. I am getting a better snapshot in my head of what these entities who are being channeled by popular YouTube lecturers and speakers, and schools even, that people are buying into. So, thought I'd look into it. Alright, so the concept of planet hopping in Dr. Newton's work precisely validates what we read in the Law of One series about the shift from the 3rd to 4th density, green ray, life on Earth. It is also interesting to note that Newton observed every color in the rainbow spectrum appearing in his clients, so I guess he could see auras, souls fairly routinely, except for green, which is almost never seen. In the Law of One terms, Series 122, the Earth has to make a quantum leap into the green ray level before any of its inhabitants can become activated. So I guess some of us are going to become activated. We're going to ascend into the 4th dimension. Become more powerful, more psychic, more abilities to manifest. Is that the case? Which is when their souls fully transition into the green ray density. We will discuss this process in part 4. Higher level entities from blue ray and indigo ray can and do visit Earth as wanderers. So people who have reached 5th density, 6th density, like divine beings, they come back to Earth as wanderers, some kind of spiritual helpers for mankind. So it says in this book. Again, I'm not trying to teach this stuff. My mind's still processing. Usually to help out the planet while massively speeding up their own evolution as well. So apparently when you come to Earth to help other people, you are speeding up your own growth and evolution. Wow. So when I decided to look into this material almost 13 years ago, And have I gained anything? I've gained a lot of knowledge. I have some answers to my questions. There is a conspiracy, not a conspiracy theory. There is a conspiracy for the New Age and New World Order. And they are bent on saying there's no more rules or sins or commandments that we should listen to, because we should all have any experience that we want. And they apparently, the secret societies, these cults, lodges, and temples, want to banish the religions we all know and create something new, the New Age, the Rainbow Agenda. And apparently there are selfish forces who think they're going to control the planet, as in the Jewish utopia, Protocols of Zion, Zionism, communism, world banking system, and they're using fear and threats, sustainability, biodiversity, global warming, terrorism, economic collapse, and fear of each other, needing to disarm the people, create more regulations, microchipping us, monitoring us, the Hunger Games movie type thing. So you've got to wonder what the plan is at the end of the day. At least I wonder. Back to the book. Dr. Newton's research about the timing between reincarnation closely mirrors that we find in the Casey readings, Edgar Casey. Apparently, David Wilcock thinks he's Edgar Casey reincarnated. A nice big thick book trying to prove that. I haven't read any of it yet, but I will. We'll get to that. Dr. Newton found that during the Neolithic type time periods, so your caveman time periods, hundreds or even thousands of years can elapse between physical incarnations. Well, you think any of them spiritual entities wanted to come here to Earth and get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or a dinosaur with no bathroom facilities and food processing plants? Just saying, if different planets are at different points of evolution, all those reincarnated souls must have been going somewhere. Once we see agriculture and animal husbandry, reincarnation begins to happen more often on Earth. But lifetimes can still be separated by as many as 500 years. So the question is, how often between reincarnations? From Edgar Casey, it seems to me like sometimes it's 1,000 years between incarnations, or 500 or 600 years. But some of this material seems to indicate it could be a couple hundred years, which in the spiritual world is a very short period of time. Our years are but days or hours to them, interestingly enough. Dr. Newman's clients lived an average of once every 200 years between 1000 AD, 1000 years after Jesus, and 1500 AD, and after 1700 AD, they lived once per century. Well, people were getting born every 100 years. It is very common for souls to incarnate more than once a century as we head into the 1990s. All of this research very nearly parallels what we learn in the Casey readings. What's interesting with that conversation is, as we all know, 6 billion plus people on the planet, and then they're saying the planet's about to ascend from 3rd density to 4th density. You suppose a lot more incarnated or spiritual beings decided to incarnate on Earth at this time for a reason of some kind of ascension? You know, if the ship's getting to sail, if Earth's going to go from 3rd density to 4th density, did everybody want to be here for the event? That's been said. I'm not making that up. Just interesting previous stuff that I've studied. And when I read this new stuff, I kind of put 2 and 2 together. Is that why there's so many people on the planet? And all these preparations for some big event? The Ring of Destiny. The main responsibility we have in the life selection stage. So when you reincarnate, while you're in the spiritual world, after you died from a previous incarnation, a previous life, you get to go into some kind of school or education thing called the life selection stage, is to reach a place that some of Dr. Newman's clients called the Ring of Destiny, which often appears as a sphere of bright light. Moving into this stage, we are full of bright hope and lofty expectations as we think positively about our next lifetime. We are excited about the possibility of making real spiritual growth. So when you do read this stuff, it does sound kind of wonderful. Better than any going to Hades and burning in fire and brimstone. All right. And we're excited about the possibility of making real spiritual growth. Once we move into this sphere, we often feel like we are stepping into a highly futuristic cockpit. Different screens float around us, giving us visual impressions of the different lifetimes we could choose for our next incarnation. We also have a control panel that allows us to review these different screens, including fast forwarding and rewinding the events that will happen in these lives. So I guess you can kind of watch a preview of your life before you choose it. I guess some people are wondering, what the heck was I thinking choosing that life? I wanted to be taller than that. Crazy. All right. The screens are in dynamic fluid-like movement within the sphere of light. As we pull up one screen for review, it flows towards us while other nearby screens move away. So I guess you get a selection of the physical bodies you can be in. You get to review it, apparently. We also have the opportunity to project into these different scenes and experience them as if they were really happening to us. Some part of our awareness still remains at the control panel, but most of what we experience is now happening within the scene itself. Each lifetime we can choose from has different events, and some could be challenging or difficult, such as debilitating injuries. These events are ultimately intended to help us grow and evolve as souls. We see that choices will be placed in front of us as these events occur, and we cannot be sure what decisions we will make once we reach these points. So even though you see your pre-life on a screen, you can't be sure of the decisions you will make. So it may not turn out the way that you thought it would. We are not allowed to see what the consequences of those decisions will be as we move into the future within these lifetimes. We may try to make guesses, but the future reality of these choices is not made visible to us. For a very good reason. If we knew and could foresee the consequences of the events that will happen and the choices that we will make, there would be no real free will and learning experiences as we select a given lifetime. So if we knew what was going to happen, we wouldn't make certain choices, so it wouldn't be free will. But then again, I'm listening to all these channeled entities, and they keep saying that the key thing is free will. So I guess you can have free will while you're in the human body, but you can't have free will to know about future events. A typical life selection process within the Ring of Destiny will involve a choice from among 4 different lifetimes. Our guides are not present to advise us at this stage. So apparently when you're in the in-between lifetimes, you have a guide like an angel assisting you. We run through the entire process by ourselves. In some cases, souls volunteer for lives that will end prematurely in violent deaths or through sudden fatal illnesses. One client chose to be an American Indian boy who would die when he was only 7 years old. In this case, a short life, as a mistreated, starving child could give him a fast lesson in humility, which helped burn off a great deal of karma very quickly. So apparently he had some bad karma from a previous life and needed to make some technical decisions to burn off that karma to make amends, to gain some experience. Just theorizing here from reading this material. Another client chose to incarnate at the Ducha concentration camp. Ooh, in Germany, I suspect. With 3 others of her soul group, giving her the chance to comfort the children and try to help them survive. She accomplished her mission courageously, and she undoubtedly created a great deal of positive karma for herself in the process. Bear in mind that souls do not haphazardly choose missions like this. Well, these kinds of choices are not normal. They will choose them only if they feel they are strong enough to handle them. These missions, of course, don't always go as planned, but the souls do go in with the highest and best intentions. Well, again, I am not trying to teach this as a religious philosophy or something I absolutely believe in, but if I'm going to continue listening to the channeled material and putting that in line with my series, Freemasonry and Satanism, and trying to figure out WTH, what the heck is going on in our reality, I suppose I've got to kind of take a look at everything. Put it up here. Use some discernment. Use some common sense. Like 911, you know, people know if they look into it even a little bit that it was an inside job and it's meant to sway public opinion. They couldn't have overthrown all those countries in the Middle East. Relatives of ours. Isn't that where we all came from? We weren't. All of our races didn't start up here in the United States. So why should we stand by idly while they're killing all those people, destroying their towns and their cities? What's that do for people's karma when they're full of apathy and ignorance by choice? Same thing with sky spraying of chemicals. Why isn't there an uproar or fluoride in the water or genetically modified foods that your body doesn't recognize? It sees those enzymes and things that get consumed by your body from the GMOs as an enemy, and in your body the cells encircle that particle and to protect your body, causing a tumor. Go look this stuff up, GMOs and tumors and rats and people and humans and cell phone technologies and the ringing in our ears. HARP system, microwave transmitters. So whatever we have to agree on is that it seems that we're under attack, and it seems that we need to understand why they're trying to destroy people's belief in God and religion. All right. Hope you're finding this information fascinating. Don't necessarily believe it all. I've got a lot more to go in my reading, but it's better than looking into nothing. And it does give us a snapshot of what David Wilcock was writing about. All right, so that chapter there was Stage 7, Life Selection. Now we're going to go to Stage 8, Choosing a New Body. Dr. Michael Newton does not consider choosing a new body to be a separate stage, since this process also occurs within the ring of destiny life selection area. So when you get ready to select another body and another life, you get to reviews in some kind of computer-like system, different choices and what will happen. Nonetheless, a separate chapter is devoted to this aspect of the process we must all go through, and it heavily influences our decision-making process for whichever life we will choose. In this stage, on the screen that floats around in the cockpit-like area, so when you review your choices of bodies and lives, we are presented with various bodies within which we can choose to incarnate. We can see how the bodies will look and feel, and how they function, and how they think. Throughout the different levels of biological age we will experience. So if you've lived as long as I have, you've been through some changes. Every human body we see around us, no matter how it looks, is the product of a careful soul's choice. Do you believe this? A great deal of time and attention is paid to the specifics of each body, and there is usually no such thing as a hasty decision. This is generally not the first time we have thought about our next body. We often spend time deliberating which body we will choose in an earlier stage, and will take the choice over with our guide, talk the choice over with our guide, spirit guide angel, and the people in our soul group. So apparently people incarnate in groups that know each other. And again, like I said at the beginning of this video, one of the people in your soul group might have been your mother, and in the next lifetime it might be your daughter, etc. A friend. Dr. Newton found that most major injuries we go through in our lives are chosen at this stage. Wow. Before we are born. Choosing a body involves the full awareness of what will happen to it throughout a given lifetime. Again, we are prevented from seeing exactly how these events will shape our personality. It gets a little confusing when you're reading material. You see the word prevented, and you're just reading quickly. Your brain doesn't process it. It's not like being an actor where you've memorized the lines. I pre-read this material once, and I make a video on the second go-around. Each body has difficulties that come along with it, and we take our time and choose carefully. If we have recently come out of a life that was relatively easy and stress-free, we may well decide to come back into a body and a life that will present us with many more challenges. So it is an interesting question when people are spiritual beings choosing a life, if this stuff is true. Why they choose to be Chinese, Mongolian, African, American Indian, Mayan, German, English, Spanish, Spain, Brazil, Peru, Eskimo, Aborigine. I'm kind of curious to go to the other side between my lives and make a few inquiries why some people choose this or that. You think? I like to have a little fun with my brain here while I'm reading this stuff. What ifs and what about this? What about that? Dr. Newton's research found that bodies with physical difficulties of various sorts almost always end up producing an acceleration of spiritual evolution. Well, there may lie the answer. Some people choose difficult bodies and situations for spiritual evolution. They want to move up and graduate from school faster. All right. Here's one here about Leith, the Vikings' cycle of karma. So this one person decided to incarnate into somebody named Leth, a tall, physically strong body. Case 26 in Dr. Newman's book is fascinating in terms of showing how wildly a soul's choice of a body can vary from one incarnation to the next. Case 26 was a tall, athletic, well-proportioned woman who had suffered recurring leg pain throughout her life. Doctors could not find any medical reason for her pain, but it persisted nevertheless, and she was willing to try anything, including hypnotherapy, to seek relief. Dr. Newton suspected that the root cause of the pain might be found in a past life, so he put her through regression. In the subconscious state, she found herself in the ring of destiny. So she was in between lives, in the ring of destiny, looking at all those screens, who she was going to be, where she was going to go. So here she gets hypnotized and she recalls that moment. After having requested a life in one of the strongest, healthiest, and most powerful bodies on earth at that time. She had the choice between a Roman soldier who would have suffered through the hierarchical system of control, or a Viking named Leth, L-E-T-H, who could run free and do as he pleased. She chose Leth, and in this lifetime, around 800 A.D. after Christ, she appeared as this brutal and powerful man. As a soul, she enjoyed the experience of the power of the body and all the material pursuits, including drinking, fighting, pillaging, and sexual conquest. Leth never got sick and was unresponsive to physical pain. He could never get enough food, drink, fighting, plundering, and sex. Apparently everyone in this era had similar behaviors and attitudes. So Leth did not stand out as an unusually aggressive or negative soul. Nevertheless, the infringements he caused on the free will of others came back around quite strongly. So he gained a lot of negative karma. He may well have needed to wait several lifetimes until he was strong enough to balance the karma he had created as Leth. This case also reveals that younger souls do not necessarily understand the law of karma. If they want to go into a life that will most likely involve hurting others, their guides will knowingly allow them to do so. They are offered choices of a new life situation and new bodies, but until they become more advanced, they may not realize that their pre-programmed disasters that must happen to those bodies are in direct result of the choices they made in an earlier incarnation. When Dr. Newman asked this woman to explore the reasons for her reoccurring leg pains, that would be the person we've just been reading about, she immediately moved into her most recent current past life. So she's under hypnosis. She was now a 6-year-old girl named Ashley, who was living in New England in the year 1871. More than 1,000 years after her lifetime as Leth. While Ashley was riding in a horse-drawn carriage that was heavily burdened with weight, she fell out. The wheels ran over her legs, above the knees, and crushed them. This is 1,000 years after she was this Leth character, drinking and plundering, living that kind of life, and now she has this life. Ashley's legs never healed properly, and she spent the rest of her life having to walk with wooden crutches. She also suffered frequent swelling in her legs and died in a relatively young age in 1912. 25, 35, 40 years old. By this point, she had worked as a writer and a tutor of disadvantaged children, and therefore had built a great deal of positive karma as a soul. So she had a lot of negative karma as the healthy, strong, barbarian man lived, drinking and plundering and sexting everything he could find. So in this next life, she gets this situation. And now she's born the third time seeing this doctor, and she's having these leg pains, which were attributed to the wagging in a previous life crushing her legs. And apparently a hypnotherapist doctor can help erase those memories from your self somehow and make that pain go away. Sort of like what they do with people who have alien abduction situations or other stuff where they've been mind controls. The hypnotist can get to the root of these matters. I've gone over that material, and I'll be going over those topics again. In the afterlife state, she realized that she had chosen this injury to help her develop the power of mental concentration, but she did not appear to understand that it was also a karmic balancing of the experiences she had created for others as life. In her lifetime as Ashless, she spent most of her time in bed, learned to read, write, and communicate well. She was then able to see how she had directly worked from the afterlife stage to arrange the carriage accident and to make sure it would happen properly at the chosen time. So between her spiritual self and whatever other forces, all this was planned. This involved a telepathic coordination between her soul and her body on the subconscious level. She had also given herself subconscious memory tags to know and expect this moment. So subconsciously, we all kind of know more than what we think we know, like intuitive feelings or things that make people slam on the brakes or look this way when something bad's going to happen. Apparently your soul is also awake when you're awake, your mind, and it has ways of communicating to us and alerting us of dangers and things. FYI. Although she had a period of time when she could have chosen not to go through with the carriage accident, she knew it was the best move she could make. She had options for other bodily injuries, but had specifically chosen this accident because it would limit her ability to walk. This would compel her to develop her mind more fully, since she had long periods of unbroken solitude. She made good use of the experience, with the sole problem being that she was slightly too indulged and pampered in that lifetime. Dr. Newton was able to run her through desensitization exercises under hypnosis, thus removed her subconscious memory of the leg pain entirely. Later, she reconnected with Dr. Newton and happily revealed that her leg pain had never come back, and she was routinely playing tennis. Dr. Newton also reveals that an energetic handshake of sorts must be made between the soul and the physical body. Without the influence of the soul, a person wouldn't be very interesting. He or she would be fairly primal in nature and would be ruled by emotions. I guess we'd be more like animals without these developed souls inside of us. That's what it says here. All right, the soul can determine whether someone is an extrovert or an introvert, whether the personal is emotional or intellectual, and whether the person is rational or idealistic in nature. Many of our personality attributes carry over from one life to the next, but there are also personality influences that are the direct result of the body itself, its heredity, and its experience. Some souls constantly choose to return as people who are critical domineering and cold, even though they will end up being fully accountable for the hurts they cause to others by their attitude and behavior. Souls like this can often offer a great deal of karma and growth benefits to others. So these people who come here to be harmful and detrimental to the rest of us may be offering the rest of us some opportunities for karma growth, I suppose, in putting up with them, and are often needed to help others balance our own depths. Some souls realize that they need to have people like this in their lives, people who are strong, tough, or else they will end up dominating and manipulating everyone around them. Souls with this dominant critical personality type appear to have great difficulty than most in blending themselves with the human body and brain they have chosen in a given lifetime. So I guess who you are as a spiritual being does affect who you are a little bit as a human. The soul often cannot get messages through or does not have much influence on the body when the body is going through great stress or strong emotions. All right, moving on. The next highlighted topic, Stage 9, Preparation and Embarkment. In the preparation and embarkment stage, we leave the ring of destiny. So now you've made your choice, who you're going to be, where you're going to go. And have an intensive planning meeting with the people who will play key roles in our lives, usually from our soul group. Wow, that's interesting. So everybody's chosen who they're going to be, the role they're going to play, and you get together with everybody before you wind up inside of a little baby. This stage is the afterlife. This stage of the afterlife is very relevant to our discussion. Many synchronicities we will experience are planned out at this point in order to ensure that we will take certain steps at certain times. Higher level guides help us plan out these symbols and events that will help steer us through these key moments. So triggers and things happen in our lives that affect us. If we choose to be in a relationship with someone, we may deliberately plan a symbol that will appear when we first see that person. A particular place, a particular object that they are wearing, something funny they say, some specific music we hear in the background, and so on. We struggle at this stage to memorize each of these clues before you're born, so that we will know what to do when we see them. Once we have incarnated in a physical body and these signals appear, we generally will not remember the careful and deliberate planning that went into these events. But the memory trigger encourages us to make certain decisions. So something triggers you to go over and say hello to that girl, or that guy, or that person, for whatever the planned life experience was to be. Is that the case? A male client, 28, described a pre-birth agreement he made with a woman he meets as a child. Will be wearing a shiny silver pendant on the necklace, and the sunlight will gleam off of it. Once he was alive in the physical body, living in his hometown, this same woman walked every day on his street, and she always wore the silver pendant. The first time he met with her, the sunlight reflected off it just as he intended it to be in the afterlife. And this event activated his memory trigger. He was immediately drawn to become her friend and engaged in conversation, without consciously knowing why he felt so strongly about doing this. You ever felt that? Something wasn't an accident? Even though he knew her for only a short time before he finally moved, his family moved. She gave him a very valuable lesson in learning to respect others. As we go through the preparations and embarkment stage, we may be concerned about our level of stubbornness and resistance to the synchronicity and gut feelings that our souls use to communicate with us. In cases like these, we may layer in several different memory tags that will appear as synchronicities in our lives just to reinforce one particular decision we intend to make. Case 28 describes multiple planned triggers and he would experience when meeting a woman he had chosen to be his wife. Both of them agreed that these memory triggers and would cooperate as souls to make sure they happened. This included a laugh of hers that would remind him of the sound of tiny bells or chimes, a familiar perfume scent he would notice the first time he had danced with her, and the way her eyes would look. So do you suppose before we're born, do you suppose that we've made decisions like this, as it says in this book? Her chosen memory triggers included his big ears, the fact that he would step on her toes when they danced the first time, and the specific way she would feel when she first held him. After planning out these synchronicities to keep us on track, we often have another meeting with the Council of Elders. So while you're in the spiritual realm, you've planned all this out. You made a deal with your friend, how you're going to meet. And then you have to meet with the Council of Elders before you leave that dimension and become a human. Before we head into the rebirth stage. This meeting is used to remind us of our goals and of how important it is that we stick to our ideas in the next lifetime. On page 261, a client of Dr. Newton's reports the elders as being hairless, with oval faces, high cheekbones, smallish features, much like the appearance of certain type of extraterrestrial people have reported seeing. It was a twist when I was reading this. So these elders that have advanced along, do they look like these gray aliens? But it says here, these people did have eyes like ours, not black ovals like the gray aliens. So I suppose David Wilcock was trying to make sure he pointed that out. But many extraterrestrial witness reports do feature this type of appearance. The elders are bathed in light, and there is a strong sense of divinity. This meeting is akin to a last-minute pep talk, encouraging us to have patience, to hold true to our values, to trust ourselves in the midst of difficult situations, and to avoid indulging in anger and negativity. We may also receive an energetic boost from the elders that appears as a burst of positive power, helping inspire us and charge us with love. So before you leave the spiritual realm to be reborn, you got to meet with the elders. Stage 10, rebirth. The final stage Dr. Newton identified as rebirth. After meeting with the Council of Elders, some souls become quiet and introspective before they reincarnate, while others joke around with their friends and have a light-hearted attitude about reincarnation. Well, this doesn't sound too bad in the spiritual realm if this is the way it is, which is not what I'm trying to say, that I agree. I just want to get to know David Wilcock and what he's talking about here. I believe we are spiritual beings, and I'm not sure of the protocol, how I got here, or if I was born before, which I believe in reincarnation, and I was probably born before, and I'll probably be born again. It's probably some limited thing for something to grow me, to make me evolve as a spiritual being. There's probably little doubt about that, in my opinion. All right, once we finally depart, we have a sense of plunging downward. So you're leaving the spiritual realm, and you're plunging downward through areas of luminous energy. So when you die, you go into this black tunnel and see a light at the other end. And apparently when you come back to planet Earth, you go through a tunnel and you're going through areas of luminous energy. We may also see another dark tunnel, only this time we are returning to the Earth in it rather than leaving the Earth through it. As soon as we exit the tunnel, we find ourselves in the body of a baby within our new mother's womb. Well, if you wondered how you got there, according to this, now you know. Up until now, our new child begins school at around age 5. So before they reach age 5 and start school, we still have enough flexibility as an infant that we can leave the body for various lengths of time. We may go off and enjoy traveling with our friends to revisit places we lived in another lifetime. The minute the baby is in any physical danger or distress, we instantly snap back to take care of the problem. So as an infant, I guess you can come and go a little bit according to this material. While we are in the baby's body, we work to integrate our own soul energies with the brain of the physical body. We may also get the baby to do things that will help smooth out the relationships within the family. For example, if our mother and father are fighting, we may do something cute, such as poking their faces with both hands, smiling, giggling, to distract them back into positive thoughts. It is well within the power of the soul to get the baby to laugh when needed. All right, a little more here, and I'm going to wrap up this video. I did not read probably 3/4 of it. I only read 3/5. I read about 2/5. The beginning and the end. But I marked it, so if I make part 2, I may go back and read the middle. There was some interesting information there. Cycles of History as the master organizing file for reincarnation. Cycles of History as the master organizing file for reincarnation. The scientific proof for a living universe is quite far-reaching in scope. DNA and biological life appear to be written into the laws of quantum physics and manifest as an emergent phenomena. Wherever and however they can, stars and planets exert strong energetic influences on our conscious minds, whether we realize it or not. So there you go with astrology and the moon and Pluto and Mars and Saturn being in conjunction, whatever. People are into astrology. Our waking personalities are the result of a fusion between the body and the soul, and we cycle through many different incarnations to master the same lessons. We ensure that we will see most of our friends in each lifetime. We also reincarnate with larger groups of people as well. Potentially in the hundreds of thousands, if not more. We may very well be tied to them through a common bonds of karma, and we need to keep moving through the ups and downs, the highs and the lows, the triumphs and the disasters of life. Within these secondary groups, we keep repeating the same experiences until we choose, as a collective, to make more loving and positive choices. Our experiences are organized into extremely precise time cycles, as we will explore in part 3 of this book. We've all heard the saying that history repeats itself. But until I encountered this incredible body of data and did far more research on it myself to see if it was really true, I had no idea how structured our experiences really are. Global events seem to be completely random, formed by an impossible complex array of factors. However, it turns out that all experiences we go through from lifetime to lifetime are being guided by a hidden template of spiritual evolution known as the hero's journey. In the Law of One series, so he continues to reference this. I wonder how many other books are referencing what the channeled entities are saying. Remember when I went over the Cryon book? What was that one? I forget the series number. I think it was 124, 125. But didn't Cryon, Lee Carroll channeling him, speak before the United Nations 3 times? So are the United Nations organizations and peoples listening to him? And why did they put the Temple of Baal, B-A-A-L, in New York and London? And of course it caused a lot of religious people to be in an uproar, putting the temple, archway, excuse me, keep saying that wrong. The archway, like a doorway, which would be a portal you walk through to the devil. And then I found out of the United Nations through UNESCO, they were putting 1,000 of these up all over the world. Why would they do that? So even the United Nations was listening to Cryon channeled material. Why? Should that concern us? I think so. Again, we're not supposed to be stupid human beings. We're supposed to be paying attention. We can make decisions what's right and wrong. And whether you want to believe it or not, doing wrong is wrong. That's why it's called wrong. There are such a thing as sin. There are 10 commandments. And in Jesus in his lifetime added another one, thou shalt love one another. So in all this material, there's probably some truth, and if they're trying to be deceptive, they throw in some deception in with truth, which is a common ploy to deceive people. 911, good example. In the Law of One series, these experiences are called the archetypical mind, which represent the personality of the galaxy. The 4th and final book of the original Law of One series is almost entirely dedicated to the studying of the galactic mind. The archetypical mind is part of that mind which informs all experience. Please recall our earlier definition of the archetypical mind as a repository of those refinements to the cosmic and all mind made by this particular logos. And this particular logos is the Milky Way galaxy, some kind of super subconscious mind. And particularly only this logos. This archetypical mind, the logos, may be seen as one of the roots of mind, not the deepest, but certainly the most informative in some ways. The other root of mind to be recalled is that racial or planetary mind, which also informs the conceptualizations of each entity to some degree. Each logos, it's a galaxy, desires to create a more eloquent expression of experience of the Creator by the Creator. So this sounds a little bit like a secret doctrine or Kabbalah or other stuff like that. The archetypical mind is intended to heighten this ability to express the Creator in patterns more like the fan peacock's tail, each facet of the Creator vivid, upright, and shining with a articulate beauty. Well, that's right out of the mysticism, Kabbalism, Hermetic teaching, Rosicrucian, morals and dogma. secret doctrine, ISIS unveiled, then New Age philosophy, theology, the Theophist Society, who created the Lucifer Publishing Company and Lucifer Magazine. So this last little bit of information I need to look into much deeper so that I understand what's really going on. This epic story is written into every movie and television show in existence. I couldn't get this last paragraph here. And I soon found out, through a great deal of pain and suffering, that you can't even write a Hollywood screenplay that sells without having studied it extensively. So this philosophy, this teaching here, you suppose it's important? Thank you for watching my video, Rick Miracle reporting.